All right, first thing, and it's probably a good thing that you are here. You missed this many days in this class, that's gonna be rough. On the survey, couple of things on this. Number one, some of you might have noticed this. What did some of them have that others didn't? Why? Why might that change things?
A name, like name students or something. A number of students.
Why might?
How truthful you're gonna be.
Exactly. All right. And what we're going to talk about today is different things on getting good information, not just crappy information, but getting good information. If you're doing a survey or any kind of thing, to come up with some kind of statistics. What was the one on here that, or a couple on here that you probably wouldn't answer or might not answer truthfully if you had to put your name on it? Some of you probably, even because the school, and I don't think you guys never had to do this, a couple of years ago the school actually did a survey and it was on the computer. And I remember sitting in here in intervention and I knew a whole bunch of the students were not telling the truth, right? And I asked some of them, did you tell the truth? And they said, no, I'm not putting the truth on there. I said, but you did not put your name on it, did you? No. And they said it was anonymous. Yeah, but they can track my computer, which is, it might be true. I don't know. I don't know if they were doing that or not. Doesn't do a whole lot of good to do a survey if you can't count on people to be honest about it, right? Sort of a waste of time. Another one on here. I missed a whole bunch of days last year, and they're getting ready to fire me. I'm going to use this survey to show them that they better not fire me. All right? I ask, one of the questions asked, do you take Prob and Stats class? What should my percentage be there? 100%. Everybody in here is in that class, right? So when I go down to talk to Mr. Eiler, he's not real math savvy, so it's good that I can do stuff like this I do. Or Mr. Fisher, he's really not math savvy. I can go down and say, you can't fire me. I'm the only one that teaches Prob and Stats. 100% of the students, when I did a survey, 100% of the students took Prob and Stats. You can't fire me. You ain't got nobody else to teach that class. Would I be lying? Nah, but
You truthing?
Could hire someone to do it.
yeah, maybe. All right. So surveys, different ways to do these, and what we're going to learn today. The kind of sample that I did is called a convenience sample. What do you think it means to be a convenience sample?
Something that benefits you.
Sort of. Even, what's convenient mean?
Easy.
It was easy for me to do. What I have to do to get you guys to take my survey?
Give us the paper.
Give you the paper as you walk through the door, right? That was it. You guys were convenient for me. And that goes right back to this 100% thing. Was it a good sample? Are you guys a good sample of the students here at National Trail?
Yeah.
Not for,
Does he take Prob and Stats?
for me, yes. For actual good numbers, probably not. All right? And I would say, even on this bottom one where it says illegal substances, I would probably guess that you guys aren't a good sample of the overall population of National Trail. All right? Just looking around the room and knowing you for a few years. I would guess that that's probably, some of my other students I see, and I think, killed some brain cells in their short lives. Alright? So with this, should I turn these into the office or something?
Yeah. I mean, if you want.
That tree.
Sit in the line, Gabe.
Why tell the truth?
Yeah, Simpson didn't lie, Ben didn't lie,
You're
I
talking-
didn't lie.
I don't even lie. Just completely.
So, when you're doing stuff like that, and what we're gonna cover today is different ways to get samples. Again, were you guys maybe my best sample for some of those questions? No, there might have been a better way to get a better actual sample of National Trail students, and we're gonna talk about those, today. Questions on the homework? Is it pretty easy? You got a test coming up. This chapter is really short.
29.
29. Hold my homework and make sure I'm doing it right. Page 13 there. Yeah.
For CT, that's on that, I don't know.
Maybe actually I have any hold it, because I don't have it. Usually I have this, like a yes somewhere. I can do it. Problem 29. Following items appear on a physician's intake form. You guys know what a physician's intake form are? It's probably the form. You walk in the doctor's office. First you sit in the waiting room for a while, probably, right? Then they call you in, and what happens as they call you in? They ask you, who asks you questions? The nurse. The doctor's not in there yet. So the nurse asks questions, all right, listen. They might do what to you before you even walk into the little room? You weigh in, get your height, so on, so on, temperature. They do all that, the blood pressure, all that stuff. So that's what they're saying here, that's the intake form. Identify the level of measurement of the data. A, what were our levels? Let's write those up here so that we don't mess them up. What was the first one? Nominal, that's better.
Yeah.
Next one?
Ordinal.
Next one? And last one?
Ratio.
So, letter A, temperature. Ordinal?
Interval.
Interval? So everybody, which one? Interval? Now, what is interval? Let's go back over that real quick. Goes in some kind of order, right? But with zero, what do we know about zero?
It doesn't mean
It doesn't mean none. Alright, so if you're taking your temperature and your temperature is 0, that doesn't mean that you are what? Dead.
not there.
Alright? Doesn't mean that you don't have a temperature, it means your temperature is actually 0. Now, it probably does mean you're dead if your temperature is 0, but we won't talk about that. Letter B, allergies. Probably nominal, you probably just name them, right? All right, I'm allergic to this. Allergic to people whose names start with a B, so on, so on. I think you got that. Letter C, your weight.
Ratio.
Because if your weight is 0,
You're not there.
something, it actually means zero, right? I don't know, I think the weight was zero, I don't even know what to say about that, I don't know what you could. D, pain level on a scale of 1 to 10. What's that do?
Something like an order.
It's that one?
Shut up, dude.
Got that one wrong, Sam.
We got a
Ratio.
We suck. We're terrible.
I think we got every single one but zero.
Yeah.
I may, on that one. Zero sort of messes it up.
But it says 0 to 10. Your phone's
Yeah.
down.
You got a little beat.
Yes,
Do you have Lily Birdie?
yes,
Can she go to the nurse, please?
sure. I would, some of them like that one, you might put on the interval level, but this one's probably ordinal, cause zero, I don't know, zero.
I mean, if you're being asked if you're in pain, then
Zero
it's
means-
probably
Probably
over
not
zero.
Yeah, man, my leg is.
Yeah, we'll go with ordinal.
That kid that broke his arm had to go apparently.
That kid that snapped his wrist.
Yeah.
Other questions?
That had to be nasty.
We might as well do the next one too.
I saw it,
I feel
dude.
like I got that one.
I saw it.
30.
Yeah.
That looks disgusting. That look. What's the word?
So on problem 30. The following items appear on an employment application. Identify the level of measure of the data. Highest grade level completed.
Ratio. Is it ordinal?
Ordinal.
Ordinal.
Oh, yeah, 8.
Now, why is it not ratio? You guys are in 12th grade.
There's no zero.
Does that mean that the people who are in 9th grade, you're 3/4 better than they are? Not really. That's not, you can't really do it that way, so that'd be ratio if it was. That doesn't really mean that. Letter B. Why not write ordinal? What'd you guys say?
Ordinal. Ordinal.
I wasn't thinking ordinal. I was thinking something else. It's interval.
Dang it, Sam.
I explained it as interval and then wrote ordinal. I don't know why. So interval, again, going back to what I just said, it goes in some kind of order, right? And it means something, we can actually do what with it? We can add or subtract. Normally we'd subtract. So comparing you guys to 9th graders, you'd say what? 3 years older than them or ahead of them. And that makes sense. 12 minus 9, 3 years ahead of them. Now, does it make sense? It can't be ratio because does it make sense to say that you're, if we did 9 over 12 and we reduce that down to 3/4, does that mean you're 3/4 better than them? Not necessarily. That's not the way that works. So interval. Sorry, I'm not paying attention. Next one. Gender. Nominal.
No.
She's given a name, right? Either male or female. Next one. No comments. Year of college graduation. Interval. Everybody agree with that? Same idea as what we just said up there. Next one, have I missed any yet? Oh, didn't even check
Was I
that.
supposed to be looking at that?
Next one, number of years at last job. So number of years you spent at your last job. maybe interval, but
Makes sense.
it's actually a ratio.
More.
Alright, ratio, because now can we not only, let's say you had 5 jobs. Alright? One of the jobs you spent 2 years at, next job you spent 4 years at, next job you spent 8 years at. Not only can you subtract and say, I spent 6 more years at my last job than I did my first job by subtracting, right? So that'd make it the interval level. But you can also say, I spent 4 times as many years at my last job as my first job. And it makes sense. That's what ratio is. Ratio you can add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Interval you can only do what? Add or subtract. And then ordinal and nominal, what can you do?
Nothing.
None of those.
Yeah,
Right?
but that's like that.
So ordinal is just some kind of order, and nominal is just names. Other questions?
Sure.
Well, you guys did that by Friday, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That,
As long as I have my notes, I'm good.
you got our notes?
Yeah, as long as you don't make us put our names on it.
No names on the test, it's a curve.
We'll talk about that too. Maybe I will
I don't
do the old bell curve.
Please go.
Want the bell curve? Does anybody know what that is? We'll talk about it.
So it means simpler. Hold up the top.
Other questions on the homework? Are we done? I'll explain bell curve real quick.
That's down.
Go ahead and get out something to write with, notes. A few years ago, Miami University in Oxford figured out, number one, Miami's a pretty intelligent school, right? The people that get in there usually fairly intelligent, usually pretty academically high. They figured out that like 80% of their students were getting A's and B's, all A's and B's. Should it be that way? Where should the highest percentage of your students be? What level? CD. So if 80% is getting A's and B's, then no longer is the C range the average range. Right? So they figured out, hey, this is the grades we're giving, something's not right here. Because we can't say that 80% of our students are above average. That doesn't make any sense. Our average range should be the biggest range, and then a certain percentage above, a certain percentage below. So they changed their grading, and they started using the bell curve. And they didn't create the bell curve or anything, so don't think that Miami's that big of geniuses or anything. They started using the bell curve. Maybe I'll do this on our test. In the bell curve, yes. All right, thank you. In the bell curve, this is the C range, and there's a certain percentage in there, and we're going to use this bell curve over and over and over throughout the year. Then you got the B range, then you got the A range. Sorry, that's not the correct size or anything. Then you got the D range, then you got the F range. All right, and there's a certain percentage that has to go in each one of these. I gotta remember what this is. No one messes up. I think that's like 56%, and then this one's 13%, and this one is like 3%, and this one's 3%. Let's see, that's 26, 32. That can't be right. So I'm messing this one up. Because it's actually split in half. You got upper C and lower C. That's 16, 26. What's 100 minus 26? 74? So this is 74%, something like that. 74% of the students have to fall here. 13% here, 3% here, 13% here, 3% there. So that means that when we do this test, Elijah show up. So that means 13% of you, when we take this test, 13% is gonna have to what? Get a D. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 people. Somebody grab a calculator for me. And if you don't have one, you better be getting one here real soon. The next chapter we're gonna be using it.
2 people.
2 people?
Here we go, sir.
So 2 people's gonna get a D. That also means 2 people are gonna get a what? B. What's 3% of, what'd I say, 18? Is that what I said? 17?
Half.
1.5, is that what it says?
No, it's 0.5.
That was 0.5. So we'll say 1 here, 1 there. So we got 3, 6, how many's left in here? That's the way our class will be split up when, after you take this test. 11 people are gonna fall in that C range, if I curve it using the bell curve. 11 people are gonna fall in that C range. 1 will get an A, 1 an F, 2 a D, 2 a B. Do we wanna do that?
How does that work if like everybody gets?
Because I want to
I'm not liking this change.
No, I'm not leaving.
I feel like I'm gonna fall
See,
in
that's
this.
the thing.
These chances
Wouldn't
are
be
very
above
high.
a C if I'm
Your
using
chances
this.
are to be
Great.
in C.
So,
That 3%. No, my chances are to get the only F.
everybody all right and something's wrong.
That's like having 100 scales, but one of them's pointing, you still need the
Why
scales.
is it easy captured though?
What, like, would you make the test harder?
You just said this is
Or would you just be like, well, they kinda got like
Oh,
almost
I
a
do
70.
every day.
Number one,
I remind them.
I've never ever had any test where I've given, maybe a little quiz or something, but never a test where everybody got everything all right, so I'm not worried about that. That's out the window. We're not even gonna consider that, alright? And now, you guys might say, well, we're the smartest class you've ever had, so it's gonna happen. Well, that might be. We'll find out in a few days. But since I've never had it happen, I'm not even gonna consider it at this moment. So, all you do is, even if it's a real easy test, so let's say the grades look like this. I'm not gonna write every single one of them out here. I'm not doing 17 of them. But you get the idea, right? That person's gonna be a what? An F.
Yeah.
Alright, regardless, that person, that last grade is gonna end up being a F. I don't like that.
I think we rock with
That's
this.
not-
Let's not use
I think
that.
the grades you get is the grades you get.
Let's not use that.
So, that's the bell curve, and that's the way things ought to work, is most people should be in that average range, alright? Now, what, and Miami went away from that, it only took like a year, and parents were throwing a fit, because now all of a sudden, their kid that went through 12 years of high school, scored like a 36 on their ACT and stuff like that, all of a sudden they were getting C's. They'd never seen that grade on a report card before. That didn't make them happy. So they had to do away with it. They couldn't do that. But if we did use that, what a lot of teachers do if they're using a bell curve is they don't necessarily make this an F, alright? So if it's that way, if it's set up that way where the test was that easy that everybody did really well on it, then what you would do is you would set it up and split it up, find like the average grade and put that average grade right in the middle, and then base things off of that using the bell curve. So if you scored at 90, I probably or let's even change that, if you scored an 89 and that was the lowest score on the test, I probably wouldn't give you an F, but you might be down there in that D range. All right, just to sort of fit the curve. So that's a bell curve, and we're gonna use that a whole bunch. And it's horrible getting old, because if anybody in the world should remember what those numbers are in there, it should be me. And I don't know why I can't remember that center number right now. It's like 27 and 20. That's not right. That's gonna bother me. I'll have to look it up. All right, what we're gonna do, experimental design. And we're not gonna design any experiments. I wouldn't write any of this down yet. We'll get to something though. The teacher who taught this before I taught it, he was more into it, and he said, all right, you gotta go out and do this and this and this, and ask all your friends this and this and this, and actually do surveys and everything, and come up with an experiment and design the whole thing, and then give all the statistics about it. I don't like doing that, because if I ask Sean to go out and ask his friends, well, if I tell Sean to go out and ask a bunch of people, who's he gonna ask? All his friends. And they're just like him, probably, right? And it's gonna be the same for each one of you, and then the experiment comes back and it's skewed one way or another. So I don't think it does a whole lot of good. But we are going to discuss how to design a study, how to collect the information for a study, how to design an experiment, and all the different sampling techniques. And we talked about a couple of them a little while ago, and we're going to talk about them again. And that's going to be the main thing of this lesson, is all the different sampling techniques. I wouldn't write any of this down, because we're not actually going to design this or do any of it on our own. But just to tell you how you would if you were actually going to do some kind of experiment or some kind of big, long study. Identify your variables of interest. So what you're trying to focus on, hey, what am I trying to do here? What am I trying to see how many students plan on going to college, and how many students plan on going to a technical school, how many students plan on entering the workforce, so on and so on. That might be your focus. That's your variable. Not a variable like X in algebra, all right? It's not that. It's a variable. What are we looking at? What's changing as we go? Know your population. You know, who are you looking at? You're just looking at National Trail. And is National Trail a good sample of all of Preble County, or all of high school students, or all of anything? National Trail probably wouldn't be a good example of all high school students, all right? Because we live where? In the country, right? There's a whole lot of people in this school that are probably going to go work on the farm, or work on, whatever, stuff like that, where that doesn't happen if you live in downtown Dayton. You're not going to see many of those kids that are going to go out and work on the farm. Develop a detailed plan for collecting the data, so set up whatever it is that you're going to try, and make sure that you know how to do it. If you use a sample, probably not if you use a sample, because you're going to use a sample. Make sure the sample is representative of the population. Just like I said about you guys, were you guys a good representation of the entire population of National Trail here?
No.
Probably not. So that my setup wasn't a good setup. Collect the data. I collected the data, and it's getting calculated right now, right? Then you're gonna work on describing the data. What's it telling you? Is it telling you what you want? What happens with a lot of studies, you think, when the data doesn't tell the people what they want? They go back and they do something different and they start all over again and just get rid of that. Interpret the data. Know what it's telling you. Make decisions about the entire population. Again, I was making the decision or the inference about the entire population, that the entire population of National Trail takes what class? Problem stats. And that's not true. But that's an inference that I made from the information that I got. So this is how to design a study. Again, we're not going to design our own study. You get out in the real world and there's some big wig somewhere and you may have design a study or you want to figure out what new business, you got millions and millions of dollars, Phoenix, and you want to figure out what new business can I start in El Dorado to earn more money, get some great big business. Probably not, don't want to, I don't know, what business would you might not want to start in El Dorado?
Ice cream shop.
That might be something you might want to
So
start.
it's right down the road.
Oh, is there another one?
But you don't have to drive to the dairy freeze to go to it, so boom, you're just right smack dab in the middle of El Dorado. You don't have to go to New Madison or West
But it's
Manchester.
already,
You're in El
but
Dorado.
New Madison, or
You're already in El Dorado.
the one
You're
in
already
West
there.
Man's already an established business. Okay, and you know
But
what
you just,
food you're gonna get there.
you
What if
fling it off. Now, you're talking to the man that worked at dairy.
Just because you know what food you're
is.
gonna get there, doesn't mean everybody else does.
it's already a drowned out market, right? It's already an ice cream shop.
You can do it.
I think that a dairy freeze like place in El Dorado would be a good place to have.
The,
And you should sort that.
the last thing down here, identify possible errors in your thing. What could have been an error? What, with my thing, an error was, some of you had to put your name on it. You might not tell me the whole truth. So on and so on. Different errors. Let's see. Write down, again, don't write down every word. Try to abbreviate stuff, simplify stuff down to something that makes this easy to write. An observational study, exactly what it sounds like. You're just observing. Alright, so you're observing something, taking notes about it, and then deciding stuff from your observations. Where might you do an observational study? What might you do? Anything, what's something you might observe just that you want to know about? Where you guys go after this?
Lunch.
Lunch. Look, Sean was all over that.
That's right. I've been hungry since first of all.
Sean's been hungry since coming out of the womb. So lunch. How might the lunch people down there do an observational study?
People go outside.
Maybe. How many people go outside?
How many people go if you get second trays?
So, if, and I don't know, I haven't been down there to lunch for a while, is everything a la carte now? Or can you still just buy the normal a la carte, that means you buy separate items?
Oh no, you get like.
You get, so your lunch is a set thing?
Yeah.
Alright, so it's sort of still, So what might they do when you take your tray back up there? You still take your tray back up and set it in the window and stuff, and they clean it, or do you just throw it away? Oh, it's a disposable trays now? They don't clean trays anymore? Alright, so that doesn't help a whole lot. I guess they could stand somebody there by the trash can. What might a person standing by the trash can be watching for as they, and probably even more than that, seeing what they did not eat, right? Because if a whole bunch of students did not eat a certain item, then what might that tell you? Don't serve it again. Serve, figure out something different. So that'd be an observational study. Yes, this one. An experiment's a treatment is applied to part of a population and responses are observed. A couple of professions use experiments a lot. Any guesses? Give some kind of treatment. What's that tell you right away? A doctor. Right? And doctors do experiments, some. The people who do the experiments even more than doctors are the people who work with the physicians to give you your medicine, or give anybody their medicine. When you go into a doctor and they collect all that information on you, the nurse does, then they go hand it to the doctor, and you're sitting in that little room and something. What do you think the doctor's doing? Is he outside smoking a cigarette or something?
Seeing other patients,
Maybe, maybe not.
talking to the.
He's going over the information and probably looking up what? Treatment and what it could be online somewhere. And I don't think that all doctors are just geniuses and they just know everything. They get what you have and then look up stuff and say, okay, if Gage has these symptoms, this could be what's wrong with him. So you gotta be careful if you go in with a broken arm and your doctor comes in and says, all right, I think you got strep throat, and he treats that, he might have gotten the wrong information from his nurse or something, I don't know. A real lucrative business is drug and medicine, not that kind of drug, but the pharmacy stuff, where they're developing these treatments. And a whole bunch of you will probably go off to college and you'll get things in your college mail that'll say, we'll pay you $100 to come spend a weekend and try out this treatment. Be real careful.
And you do it.
All right? Because Phoenix is going to be running in there and you guys are going to see Phoenix. You all come back for Thanksgiving or whatever. And Phoenix will come back and say, yeah, I've been doing all these treatments, and he'll look like this. I've been getting paid to do these treatments on the weekends.
I get a blue strip though.
I see.
I don't know what they're doing. They don't seem like they're doing anything. Simulations have become a much bigger thing, and why? Why might they be a whole lot bigger now than they were 20 years ago? Because you can use what? Computers. You do a whole lot of simulations. Used to be that, like, when I was growing up, a big commercial was they'd show those crash dummies, and they'd run the cars into the walls and everything. They don't do near as much of that now as they used to, because now they can do the simulations on a computer and get sort of the same results. They still do some of it, but they do more of it on the computer now, so that they don't have to waste the cars, because then that wastes money for the company. Survey, hopefully you know what a survey is. We just got done doing one. where you sort of get something and you just ask questions. And a census is measurement of the entire population. Again, what did we say about doing a census?
It's really hard.
It's really hard, probably never gonna happen. What we'll do most of the time is a sample, part of the population.
How's that not a blocking? It's a blind side block, where it's a block in the back.
I got called a block in the back from doing the same thing, but I didn't toss the kid.
See, because he didn't toss the kid.
The ref was like, oh, that's cool, we got tossed.
That's why I didn't get a flag.
When
I got blocked in the back and I didn't call it either.
These are cards.
Next play.
Did you get disrespected?
We just went over all this,
I got
so
it back
I'm
up.
skipping over some of it.
The coach was like, that's a
Same stuff I'm not sure I did on
I
that
was
one.
like,
Right, cause when you were explaining it, you were gonna go through it.
Yeah, I probably was not as lazy, just sit back there and did
yeah,
that.
which is in that other rule.
What happens when they try to do surveys on the telephone?
You just click
Yeah,
the
they
red
hang
button.
up.
You hang up, don't answer. We'll never answer
They
our.
probably tried to
They
call me
could put
today.
the-
I just didn't answer.
Why did it?
Give you a second to write some of this down.
It's a lot of red.
What's bias mean?
Favors, sir?
What is it?
Favoritism.
Alright, like showing favor to something, or showing.
Confounding memory.
Alright, so bias, if you're doing some kind of experiment, and Phoenix is doing the experiment, and all he is asking, if I had him do it, and all he's asking is males, that might be a little biased. All right, it's leaning towards getting that one certain thing, all right? So a bias could be anything. For some reason, you're getting information just because of the way you're doing the experiment. It's bias. Now maybe you're doing it on purpose to try to make your experiment look good, like when it comes to politics, and you see they do surveys of who you're going to vote for. Well, when they do that, a lot of times, like I know there was one of the news shows I was watching at one point back during one of the elections, and they were standing outside of the Democratic rally, and as people walked out, they were asking them who they were going to vote for in the election. And then they were acting all surprised that just about everybody said the Democratic person. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are there really people in our country that are that stupid that are going to think everybody's voting Democratic while you're standing right outside their convention and asking people who walk out who they're going to vote for? Well, no kidding they're going to say Democratic. What else? Why else would they be there? So that would be a bias. A confounding variable. You do some experiment and something screws it up and you don't know what it was. Like maybe I do an experiment, you guys aren't a good example. Sometimes I had this class first block and I would do a survey or something, and I'd get numbers that I didn't expect. And it might be because it was early in the morning and they just didn't feel like doing anything. All right? So that might be a confounding variable. It screwed everything up that one time. It might be something completely different the next time. Placebo effect. This is big. Placebo effect. If I start giving you something, let's say you walk in here every day, and I give you a little pill, and I say, take this, it's going to give you more energy. And I just give it to all of you, and I keep doing it over and over and over again. And maybe all I'm giving you is a sugar pill or something. And all of a sudden, everybody's perked up more. That's a placebo effect. Placebo effect is when you're not actually getting treatment, but mentally, you think you are, and it's causing something to occur. A lot of times with the placebo effect, you'll see it's not as bad as it used to be, but doctors, especially with cancer, would be giving the people treatment, even though there wasn't. I know my father-in-law was this way. They were giving him treatment, and I would talk to the doctors outside and say, no, I think you're trying to fill me full here. Now tell me the truth. And he goes, yeah, the stuff that we're doing isn't really going to do anything. We're just trying to give him some kind of hope. So that's placebo. It makes you think that you're. A lot of times with the placebo, and this goes down to the blind experiment and the double blind. I might split the class up and say, all right, I'm going to give this half the class this pill to give you energy. The rest of you, I'm not going to give it to you. All right? And see if it works. So now you got half getting the treatment, half not getting the treatment. And, if it's just, maybe I'm giving half of them an actual pill that will give them energy, with a bunch of caffeine in it. The other half I'm not. Well, if the other half that's not getting the pill is still thinking that they're getting the pill, then they might be wired up, and that's a placebo effect. The Hawthorne effect. Subject changes behavior because they're in an experiment. This is one of those things where if you go for a weekend or something, when you go off to school and they go for the weekend and you do some experiment, I never have completely understood those because are you going to do things exactly the same when you're in the experiment that you would have done outside of it? Probably not. And that's called the Hawthorne effect. If you know you're in an experiment, so you do things a little different than you normally would. Blind and double blind experiment, this one I don't really understand. Because if I tell you I'm giving you a placebo, and I tell the other half of the class I'm giving them the real thing, why give the placebo at all? That doesn't make any sense to me. But if the subject doesn't know that they're getting a placebo, that's a blind experiment. All right, so I don't know why I would ever tell you, hey, I'm giving you a placebo. That doesn't make any sense.
What if you didn't tell us?
Then that's when it's a blind experiment.
Okay.
So that's the blind experiment, when I don't tell who's getting it. But what I'm saying is, I think all experiments ought to be that way. There shouldn't be an experiment where I tell you I'm giving you the placebo. A blind experiment would just be an experiment, because I shouldn't tell you that, right? But that's what they call a blind experiment. A double-blind experiment is when I'm giving a placebo and stuff, but I don't know who I'm giving it to. All right? And you got double-blind is what these pharmaceutical companies should have to do, because if they're trying to create a pill that cures COVID, and they know that they're giving Riley the correct pill and they're giving Lily some placebo, who are they going to help out more? They're going to help out Riley more because they want their pill to look like it's a really good thing so they can make a whole bunch of money. All right? So all experiments should be double blind. If I'm giving the medication or whatever it is, I should know who I'm giving it to and who I'm not giving it to. Because if I do, I'm going to try to skew those numbers to fit so my pill works or my medicine works. Replication. Replication is redoing an experiment under the same conditions. Just because you do it once and it works out great, does that mean that's the way it's always going to be? No. And we found that out a lot with different cures for cancer, different medications for cancer. Now they're figuring out, maybe radiation wasn't always the greatest thing and they're trying to cut back on it and different stuff. So let's see, randomization, don't write any of this down. If I'm doing something randomly, I'm just trying to randomly pick. So maybe I put all your names in a hat, I draw it random. That'd be a good randomization. Used to be, if you had a phone book. Does anybody know what a phone book is? If you had a phone, every now and then they show up on your front porch and you think, what in the world? Because somebody came along and they paid somebody to throw them out. It used to be that you just pick numbers out of the phone book randomly to do some kind of survey or something. Sample size is just the number of subjects in your experiment, the number in your sample. Census we talked about, sampling is just a count. Sampling error, just something happens. We already talked about that. Just something causes a mess up. Write down these 5 things. Skip a space on each one. Next few sides, you're going to jot down some things for each one. A random sample, hopefully, most all of these, whenever you do a sample, hopefully most all of them are random. So random is not really its own technique here. It's just saying, hey, we want things to be at random. I don't want Phoenix to go out and pick all males. We want it to be at random. So everybody has the same chance of being picked as everybody else. I don't want to pick all seniors. I want it to be where the freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors all have the same chance of being picked. So I get a better look at what's going on. The other four are the different sampling techniques. This is, again, you know, the interval and the ordinal and all that stuff that we just did. You're gonna have to be able to tell the difference between these four. That's what's gonna be a little confusing, just like that stuff was. So a random sample, every member of the population has equal chance of being chosen. Simple random. I'm gonna read that to you. I would not write it down. Simple random just says, all right, if I'm gonna pick 3 of you at a time, then these 3 people, those 3 people, those 3 people, all 3 people have the same chance of being selected as any other 3 people. So I'm not gonna sit here and be biased and pick just these 3 every time. All right? So that's all simple random is. Same thing as random, no reason to distinguish between the two. We're not gonna go that much into detail on these. Skipping that. Stratified. Gotta rush through this a little bit. I wasted too much time. Stratified sample has members from each segment of a population. This ensures that each segment from the population is represented. Each group is called a strata. Now with stratified, I'm going to put this up here. You got freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Now what you want is you want to pick some from each one, right? So that's stratified sample. You're picking some from this group, some from this group, some from this group, some from this group. That's stratified. Does that make sense? So you're picking some from each group. A cluster. If I have to guess what a cluster sample is?
Cluster, just random.
Random people group.
Yeah, so if I was to go down to the lunchroom, I'd probably do something like pick this table, this table, this table, this table, just cluster. Or in our school here, go over, maybe pick that classroom, then another one, and then another one, and I just do those certain groups. So a cluster sample has all the members from randomly selected segments of the population. This is used when the population falls into naturally occurring subgroups. So like each classroom. So if this is our school building, then I might pick that classroom, that classroom, that classroom, that classroom, that classroom. Instead of doing like a couple people from here, a couple from here, a couple from here, that's stratified, a couple from each one of them. Now I just go around and pick this whole classroom, do it, that whole classroom, that whole classroom, that whole classroom, and do each of those. So that's clustering. Systematic, this is the easiest one. Easy. This is the easiest one to pick out. Maybe it won't be for you. It's the easiest for me to pick out because it's mathematical. Systematic, that definition makes it a whole lot harder than it is. Systematic, I have all these bananas here. Alright, and I'm gonna pick certain ones of these bananas. Pick the first one, then I skip 3, pick another one. So I pick like every 4th banana. That's all it is. Every time you hear something like every 4th, every 3rd, every 10th, that's systematic. Then the last one. Anybody remember what the last one was? Convenience. We just did that earlier. Gosh. Convenience. What I did earlier. It was convenient for me to survey you guys. That's probably being lazy. Just survey who was here. If I had you guys do a survey, you'd probably do a convenience sample. Because you'd probably just go talk to your friends and get them. And wouldn't actually say, you know what, I really want to get out here and I want to get some freshmen, I want to get some sophomores, I want to talk to some parents, I want to talk to, that probably wouldn't happen. Alright, the assignment. None of this is really hard. Most of it you're picking out that stuff. I'm going to get through all this. I hate the fact that I put picture on these because it takes forever. That's not it. That's it. Remind me next time when we start class, I'll go through 1 through 16. We'll go through them together. Just try to help you out a little bit.
Yelling so much at the board.
I was yelling first.
It was a building. Dude,
I won't lie, he cracks me up though. Cause like he'll have one good play and then he'll run over the sideline.
And then absolutely sucked.
literally one good play.
Oh, dude, I was carrying him, and then we were just oh, yeah, he's like, you want to rush? Yeah, Tom. Like, that was me blocking. Like, that was me blocking.
I'm really not gonna halt until
I can't trust him. I can't trust him. And I tell him what to do every time.
I don't know how to play before, so don't put me in the I don't even know how to play.
every single play gets told exactly.
I tried to tell him. But when we were running 5 yards up the field on pass, we were running rush. It was like 50
Very
yards.
tough. Like around useless.
Dude, literally had so long.
You're literally done. It's hurting you literally done.
That should be it. That should be the reason he's out. I literally, I go, I'm like, don't listen to my background. I shove the man down and then I see Brian somewhere.
I don't know where I'm going. You should have been the man down for it.
Yeah, should have.
How did you not hear wheel? I don't have money.
And then I'm getting my own last video. At the moment it says Urban on the back, but that's fine, I'll just scratch that out.
Anybody.
Would you go to help with me and tell me
Your brother knows.
talk to him?
Next step's quick enough. I'll be back.
Would you show him?
I would have.
I already got some pictures. Should sitting pictures.
You didn't even turn the page.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I don't cheat, alright?
So,
I only cheat sometimes.
Would you go?
When was class over?
There we go.
If we have a meeting with Matt Lowry,
Yes.
I had it for when he was into the business last year.
Okay, but the test is essentially yeah, I had my phone just under the desk. Lean back. We make it make sense and make it just different enough.
You wouldn't know.
I mean, that's fine.
If you bring it up,
He didn't know who we were anyway.
she sat by me.
Yeah, he didn't know who was Alexa. Yeah. He didn't know us.
I changed her name. I changed her name on my Snap to Goated because she.
Yeah.
Those are all.
That's how I know it works. For like,
Did you ever contribute?
No.
Giving her
no.
No.
You wouldn't want to say.
I was about to
No, I
say.
wouldn't.
Absolutely not.
I charged him.
You charged him?
I did. He owes me
She
$6.
didn't charge me because.
You only used it half a year.
That's it.
He used it the entire year. He